Hey everyone. First of all, thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here. Today, we'll talk a little bit about Mocha network and digital identity and reputation as a whole. So first of all, quick introduction. I'm Patrick. I'm leading ecosystem for Mocha network. Um, and what we're mainly focusing on is digital identity for the open internet. What that means is we're reimagining and redesigning how identity works today for both Web 2 and Web 3 with some of the new technologies that have been developed within Web 3. So let's jump into it. As a intro, first of all, I want to start with why identity is actually important and how it works today. So basically, today we already have like a large digital infrastructure behind financial applications, AI, and many other things. And digital identity is the backbone of everything because the identity behind all applications today, for example, like a Facebook or like some financial infrastructure relies on a compliant onboarding. So you can identify that you're like actually a person that also relates to, for example, a KYC. So you, for example, if you, in most cases at least, want to trade on certain exchanges, you will need to KYC to access the platform. And those are just like compliance reasons, and um, that just goes to show that you basically need to be compliant to access these type of larger use cases, and exchanges and trading is still like one of the single most largest use cases in Web3. Um, and what we're trying to do is basically having a new idea and a new approach to identity and interoperability. One being that is shareable, verifiable, and privacy preserving. Um, because today, a lot of like the interoperability that also is needed for identity, like Superchain from Optimism or ACLayer from Polygon or based rollups from Ethereum, or like specifically Justin Drake that's oftentimes talking about it, um, still relies on only a single ecosystem working and being interoperable. So if you're not part of the OP gang or you're not part of the Polygon gang, it would not work seamlessly. And what is important is what we're trying to do, or how we try to think about it, is we want to go from a user perspective. So first of all, starting with what is needed to make a user interaction really seamless and really interoperable. And what does that mean? Is it means there is a need for a global account. How you can think about it is you have one account for everything. That's new, obviously, in Web3 and crypto, but that's how we think about it. It needs to be fully accessible through all chains that are currently out there, or at least the larger ones. Your identity needs to be portable, which means you as a user. So if you use an application, a DeFi application, you should only do things once. So if you KYC once. If you do certain things like you trade, then you verify once that you're a very active trader. Um, and that should then be composable with like all other applications. So really modularity and composability around accounts. Um, and this is not just a single solution, but what we're trying to do here is really building a network of cross verification and cross referrals around all applications. So that includes different ecosystems, but that also includes like single applications. And even Larry Fink, in his 2025 annual letter, um, mentioned that identity is one of the core problems to solve, to allow for tokenized funds, which will be one of the larger capital inflows for crypto. For context, Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, which is one of the largest asset managers in the world. So to jump to the next one, this goes again to more the financial applications. We today, like in crypto, we think about decentralization, but not a lot of times we think about compliance and how to onboard actual Web2 institutions. Um, and that is fully not solved yet, because even if you see the headlines, hey, BlackRock is on chain, um, they are not really, because what they do is they basically work together with a proxy, in their case, Securitize, and they handle all the asset management for them on chain to exactly solve those compliance issues. So in this case, we basically see that there's a need to have a compliant way of onboarding these large institutions on chain, so they can actually tokenize funds or bring real world assets to crypto and to Web3. And one way of doing this is to issue larger financial credentials. Another use case or another good example of this is more in the biotech space, because I'm sure a lot of you heard that 23andMe goes through bankruptcy, and one of the essential risks and flaws I think not a lot of users of their platform were aware till today or till the bankruptcy notice got out, is that you actually don't own your data, even if it's genetics data, which is obviously very sensitive. And in this case, you can see that the genetics data will now, as part of the bankruptcy process, most likely be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Obviously, you can delete the user. You as the user still own the data, but for a lot of people that don't know their account anymore or don't have access, there is no scalable way of actually deleting the data. So it means that basically there will be a good chunk of data that will be auctioned off as part of the bankruptcy process. Even though you as the user should have like full ownership of the data, but that's not the case today, because how it looks today is that, taking the example of Meta here, you don't actually, like, legally speaking, you would own your data, but if you have ever used Meta, you will see that don't you actually own your data. What that means is, if you think about it, you as the user here, you don't actually own the data, or legally speaking, you own it, but from a meta perspective, you can't really easily access it or delete it. You actually need to go through a pretty tedious process. Um, so what this means is, if you think about it, you use like one of their products probably daily, like either Facebook or Instagram, or WhatsApp, and they collect all that data and feed it into their ad platform. And this is one of the major revenue streams that Facebook has. And then other enterprises need to pay them to access that data to gain more users and gain more buyers, actually, for the platforms. Adidas, Uber, or other examples are there. Those are global, but all of them basically pay to get access to that data, even though the data would actually belong to the user. But Facebook made a large business, or Meta made a large business with actually aggregating that data into an ad platform and making it very easy to monetize these users. And that's where we see where the incentive mechanism is really broken in Web2, namely that companies, like some of the largest companies in the world, are actually very much incentivized to silo off that data that actually belongs to users. So what we're trying to do here is actually break down those barriers and make it easier for users, first of all, to own the data. That means you would have like self-sovereign identity and your self-sovereign data that is owned by you, um, and aggregate all of that into one global embedded account that is accessible. And we basically want to make sure you re-own and can unify and verify all that data into one account. So instead of like a very fragmented ecosystem like we see here on the left side, or on the previous slide, we actually want this to be very interoperable, permissionless, and verifiable from basically anywhere. And it should be also very seamless for anybody that's interested in accessing that, and making it also very easy from a user perspective to basically access an account, create an identity, build your identity on and off chain, both ways. So as you would use the internet or use different applications, you would just build up your identity, and it would get more and more valuable the more you build it up over time. And it would not be saddled off to that application that how it is like today in Web2 applications, where like all your data from Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp is under this Facebook silo, but rather it would be under your account, under your ownership, and verifiable for other companies. And you would be incentivized. You would get a cut of that fee that they're paying, but I'll explain a bit more later. So just briefly jumping into it, what actually is Mocha Network? What we're building is an end-to-end stack that enables a full user onboarding, fully seamless, and verify user cross-user pollination, which means that basically you can verify certain users on different chains, on different applications, and target also these users. And how that is basically possible is you have one global account where you have like a full identity that can be reused over different chains, and you have Air ID and Air credentials. That's the identity part that can be used to verify certain credentials. In the next slide, we'll briefly see how that actually works. But that allows you to very much identify your users, similar to how you would do it today in Web 2, where you basically target your users in a certain region, like, for example, Turkey, and you're not really interested in other users, then you could do that, but just in a more Web3 native way, where also the user gets a cut rather than everything going to Facebook. And what the flywheel is that we're designing here is that basically with that, we want to allow for better onboardings to new applications, because you as a user, you would get incentives for new applications or offers to get to new applications and try them out. These applications would verify that data, so pay a fee for you as a user to access the platform. And that fee would then get split between the parties, and the user, so you in this case, would get a cut from that verification. So fixing this broken Web2 model is what we strive for. And how it actually works in the background is, and bear with me, I know this is like the only technical or more technical slide, so I'll try to keep it brief. So how it works is you would create an account. So as you normally do, works with every login method that you're used to. So this means like either a normal Google login or Facebook or whatever you would like to use. In that transaction, the account gets automatically created. That happens on chain. But from a user perspective, especially when onboarding Web2 users, you would not see that. And it would feel very seamless. So it would just be your normal login methods that you're used to. You visit the partner dApp that you can where you would then verify. And as you verify through that partner app, there would be a request sent for this verification. That request goes back to the master account, which can be on home chain, whatever is defined, that is fully customizable. The credentials would be stored on a decentralized data storage. That's how we can make sure it doesn't get messed with. The credential issuer, which in this case would be somebody that has issued that credential originally. So if we think about an example here, is if you log into a game on Base or Arbitrum or any other chain or on Ethereum, the credential verifier would actually make a request for the credentials for the credential issuer. And if you in the past have verified a gaming credential that you spend a lot of time in VS Go or League of Legends or any other games or Rise Online, then you would actually be able to verify that credential that you're a power player that spends a lot of time in this certain game, and that then would go back to the partner dApp in this case that you're currently accessing, and then you would verify the credential. And this is important. So step 3 is really important because you would verify, and within that verification, when the match actually happens between the issuer and the verifier, you would there is a fee to be paid by the credential verifier, and that fee is the fee I spoke about previously, which then gets split between the parties. So that means there is a split for you as the user. So you as the user for having profile and having a profile that those steps want, which means you're a gamer or you spend certain times in games, you would actually get incentivized. So you would get part of the fee. You would most likely get an offer from the verifier to spend or get a certain skin for free or for a significant discount, just as an offer to onboard you to the game to try it out. And the issuer that originally issued that credential also gets a large part of the fee, which means they would be incentivized to issue more credentials that are valuable to other applications or other ecosystems to continue to verify that. And this way, we can make sure that more and more data gets to Mocha as a whole, and also furthermore gets verified on chain by matching certain ecosystems or certain applications that are interested in that cross pollination. And today, this is not possible because if we think back about the Web2 model or the traditional model, this is not possible as long as you have all these data silos that are currently the standard. But with that, we can basically break down these silos and make sure that you can actually cross-pollinate users. And also, from a user perspective, you can actually get paid for the data that you own. The important part here as well is throughout this whole flow, we don't actually leak any data. So what that means is, compared to the traditional model, you would not your data would not be shared with a third party. This all relies on CK proofs. So a application would only generate a CK proof. This is basically the request for credential and then verify the credential would be a CK proof. So there's no data getting shared, and it's fully trustless and permissionless, which means there is no risk of data leakage, which is a significant risk today in Web2, as you probably know. And we can fully prevent that through CK. That's what I meant with we're basically using Web3 tech to solve Web2 problems, because CK is born out of Web3, but it can solve so many Web2 problems, and that's what we're doing here basically. So to just give you a bit of a sense of how this would look like, you might have already seen SK Planet in like one of the examples of the partners that we work with. They're one of the biggest telco companies in South Korea with 28 million KYC users. And what we have here is the live application that we have with them, with the embedded experience of an Air account and our wallet services. And how it looks like is we basically integrate it directly in their app in South Korea, and users can download the app as they're used to and get certain offers that you can see here from their favorite retailers and other offers. It will continuously extend. And with that, we basically allow for users to create their accounts, build up their identity, and slowly start. But the cool thing is, this is just a starting point, because as you create that account, you will be able to use that account with like all the other applications that we're integrating, which means you might create your Air account now, but then as you use other applications, you will be able to use the same data and basically um, get to a state where you have one account for everything, and your identity features would also be included here. And that is also very important because here we basically want to make sure that that identity is centric to the whole wallet, because today wallets and accounts are very asset centric, and that's also important, of course. But without the identity, you you're not able to basically access a lot of like the use cases where you need compliance, like for example, um, certain DeFi applications, for example, or even certain game incentives. So that really allows you to build up your identity and then reuse it for all other applications. So just very briefly on identity itself, because I rambled already a lot on identity, but here basically two other examples. One shows the tokenization of the identity, and the other one is an example of how it works together with a retailer. For example, we took Starbucks in this case, and you would sign in the second example with your Air account and verify it. You would only need to do this once and then check for certain Starbucks points that would then be verified. And then once you log in into your account, we could verify that you have that status, which means you have like a certain amount of points and you are an OK Cashback member. And based on that, we would issue and verify a credential um, between SK Planet and Starbucks that could then be used to get them more incentives and claim rewards, as you can see here, where you can, for example, get a free coffee. And that's exactly how a flow could look like. But that works between retailers, but that also works in Web3. So, for example, you could do this between DeFi applications, or you could do this between games, where you cross-refer users and then verifiably cross-refer users and then give them certain incentives to get them on your application. Briefly talking about the larger ecosystem of Mocha Network. So us as Mocha, we're seeded by Animoca Brands, and Animoca Brands as a whole is by now like probably pretty well known already. But just to give you a bit of a sense of the partners that we're looking forward to work with, is there are about 540 portfolio companies of Animoca, and we highlighted like some of the logos here. What is important is we what we're basically doing is we're trying to aggregate a lot of that data and information from users and applications to make it easier for new applications or existing applications in targeting users. Because one great example is we just recently had a partner of ours, can't disclose the name, but they are an existing very well-known project within the space, and they are very gaming native, but now they also are interested in DeFi users. And this is exactly one of the examples where what we're building here is very useful, because for the first time you can actually very specifically target certain users and their interests with everything that we're building around Air. And we would like to really extend that invite, obviously, to everybody like building in the space. Because if you're interested in identity, or if you're building an identity, we will spend a lot of time in actually getting awareness for it. So first of all, like getting users onboarded to it, getting them excited about it, but also like throughout the portfolio of Animoca, and as well as like the larger ecosystem, Web2 and Web3 really, getting users onboarded and getting like applications onboarded to make sure there is a large footprint, and we solve the UX issue. They make it easier for users to get cool offers, to get certain incentives, to use new chains and actually own data. That's the large part. So we're solving, and we're reimagining basically the whole data ownership should work, because there were some missteps, I would say, in Web 2. But this can now be fixed with like all that new great tech that is already available, like CK, where we don't need to expose data between parties, but we rather can generate CK proofs without sharing the data. Just generally speaking, as Mocha, we also basically have a token as Mocha network as a whole. If you've seen in the previous slide, and you might have been wondering, for the rewards that are basically shared between the whole network, and throughout our other products like Mocha List and Mocha Drop, um, this is the token that basically powers everything. We launched it July 2024, so we're almost getting close to a year, and we're listed on some major exchanges like Upbit or Bybit, and also for perps we're listed on larger exchanges like Binance or Kraken as well. And the token is the vehicle that powers all of that. So when I spoke about verification fees, when I spoke about the revenue share, the fee share, that all happens in Mocha, and that all is only possible because we're basically integrating the token into our products, and making sure that everybody is well incentivized in the flywheel to verify data and access and cross pollinate basically. So in case anybody wants to reach out, here's my contact details. Feel free to send me a message on Telegram, or feel free to also send me a message on X, depending on what you prefer. If you're building anything within identity, reputation, credentials, if you're passionate also about it, and you've already done there anything in the past, or you build an application that could use some account or some identity solution like I just described, feel free to reach out. You can reach me on any of those channels, and would be very happy to talk to some of you after that. And thank you so much for everyone for tuning in, and hope to see a lot of you soon.